is to go into politics and you want to be mayor, well, maybe you work for the governor first, then you back down to be mayor. Maybe it's you go nonprofit activist route and work into being mayor. Maybe if you work on a senator campaign or you work at a senator's office in D.C. as a staffer. There's other ways to get to mayor besides being mayor that you can work on where you are to get there.
And I think the big takeaway is that you have to be a doer and you have to be aggressive in what it is that you're actively pursuing, right? So, I was in Okinawa and as a wrench turner, we had, General Dynamics there. There are big companies on the bases that support us.
Mm-hmm.
Are you still there? Sorry. So there's big companies there that support us, and my mom and my dad used to say it all the time, a closed mouth never gets fed. If you never open your mouth and say, hey, how do I get a job with you guys? Then you'll never know. And then you'll get out and you'll hear that your buddy got a job with General Dynamics and you're like, hey, why didn't I get that job? Well, you never asked. You never went to go pursue. Mm-hmm. You never went to go network. And I say it all the time. There's no work like network because you'll never know. You never know the opportunity that you could have had if you never ask. So, I know being mayor is kind of out there, but the process of putting yourself in the position where you're able to be in that environment, right? Whether it's you want to be an engineer, whether it's you want to be a chef, right? You have to start in the kitchen somewhere. Mm-hmm. Like you have to be a go-getter. You have to go out with the intention to do the work and start from the ground up sometimes. If you're starting fresh, you're going to have to start from the ground up. If you're leaving with the tools of the trade, then you're still going to have to prove yourself in some manner. So, thank you for that, obviously, because people do get hooked on, well, LinkedIn's not working. And we're in this day and age where individuals frown upon you walking a resume in, or I don't know if they frown upon it, but for instance, like my wife and I will have a conversation. I'll say, just take your resume in, and she'll say, they only take them online. And I'm like, or you can be the one person to hand it in. They have a face with the name, and then you separate yourself from the 1,300 other people who applied online. Like there's magic to being personable. You know what I mean? So, networking is absolutely one of the biggest things that I push and push and push and push. And one big thing, even while you're in, you don't even have to be a few years out. You can make business cards for yourself, advertising yourself, journeyman in training, something. You don't have to have a business to have a business card. So there's a little tidbit with that. But with intention, I want to get back to intention because I know I'm harping on that a lot, but how do you hone your intention? I'm in my sports psychology master's program right now, and I got certified in hypnotherapy last year, and I have my bachelor's in psych. So my mind is about the mind, right? So when I hear intention, and I'm assuming you've read Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, and probably, I don't know, some others on the process of law of attraction or maybe The Secret or something. When people hear intention, they think of something like that. You sit down and you write your intention. I will land a job with BSNF for $100,000 within the next 3 months by using XYZ. And they write out their proclamation and they read it 3 times. How do you set intention in the Travis way?
I try to make goals that I feel slightly uncomfortable with, but mostly comfortable with, and that's hard. Okay. It's hard because now I'm trying to set goals that aren't bound by the uniform and are more focused on the future than the past. So, here's an example. It's what do you think you're worth? And I think either you wrote about this or maybe I was reading about it on LinkedIn this morning. But if you don't feel like you're worth $100,000, you will, eventually it'll come out in how you approach the jobs you look for. If you don't feel like you're a powerful, desired partner in your most closest relationships, you'll put those people at a distance to you. So to me, intention comes from what are the goals, and it really isn't the goals. What's the experience of your life that you feel excited and a little bit anxious by? Not so anxious that you will just don't see if you can ever be there. But, intention is about what do you identify with that you can be comfortable being identified with. And we've all grown comfortable being identified by being in the military. Hence, that's why we stayed in for so long. Eventually, though, that identity shifts, whether it's family, whether it's a shitty set of orders, whether it's not promoting or advancing, whether it's seeing the opportunities on the outside. There's going to be a reason why your intention to stay in turns towards an intention to get out. And that's not a bad thing. We kind of demonize it in a lot of ways, but there's no reason to demonize it because for each person, it's their own unique individual choice. So to me, intention comes from it's vision and mission. It's vision and mission, but it's also about identity. And it's also about what do you feel 80% comfortable identifying yourself as. And you've got to take time to, this is why I think the transition is important, why I think it's longer than most realize, is that who you intend to be on the outside may not be there because the same maybe problems or the same negative experience you had in the uniform might follow you after the uniform because your intention wasn't as clear.
Yeah.
I've got my 10-year vision just like anybody else. But the reason why it will or will not work isn't because I don't have the vision. It's because how soon can I identify with that vision? And this is something I'm fighting with personally. That identity has got to be instant. It's not, well, tomorrow, well, a week from now, well, a year from now. No, that identity is right now. And the Marine Corps is a great example. Every Marine who's ever wanted to be in the infantry knew at 15 they wanted to be in the infantry. There's no recruiting commercial I can give you that is as powerful as someone who intends to go infantry. It doesn't exist. Every sailor who's truly wanted to be a sailor has always known they were going to be a sailor. There's no Navy commercial or Coast Guard commercial I can give you that says, oh, yeah, that's it. That's the reason. That's what I want to do in my life. Like, resonance, and again, it's internal versus external. Like, if you have your own drive to do it, you do it. And I'm not sure if I'm fully answering your question. So how do I know? Me personally, I know because my goals feel exciting and scary to me at the same time. We talked about the left limit, right limit of anxiety and curiosity. My goals have me both anxious and curious, but more curious than they are anxious. And that's why I'm going towards it.
So with a soon-to-be veteran, how would you ask them to work on their intention? Would you ask them to list it, write down their top 10? How would you coach somebody through this process?
I would figure out why they chose to serve.
Gotcha.
Because why they chose the uniform is going to be the same or close to the same reason why they chose to live life after the uniform.
Gotcha.
And that's what we have to figure out. I mean, that is the argument why people are clinging to rating. It's not the rating that has any power. It's the person that wears the rating that has the power. And I know that sounds basic, but continuing to serve is a choice we continue to make. Mm-hmm. Getting out is a choice that we have to continue to be comfortable with up to the point where we EAS and we can't get back in. So for me, the core of my coaching, my focus would be to figure out why they chose to serve and what about service do they not feel is being fulfilled right now.
Gotcha. So I wanted to explore, you wrote about stances. Can we explore what stances are?
I believe working hard is a perspective of how hard the work needs to be done. So there's one of my coaches, her mentor, a former Navy nuke guy named Kevin Nations. He did 8 years nuclear underwater or subsurface and got out. He talks about this thing called chillionaire. And it's the idea that how much does your work have to feel like work for you to get to 6 or 7 figures? Mm-hmm. How many people are out there, and this goes back to your LinkedIn networking thing. How many people are doing the hard marketing to get the business they want versus doing the referrals method to get the business they want? And it's what I learned in real estate. You know, we talked about in real estate, you have your warm leads, your cold leads, and referrals. But ultimately, what if your marketing budget was zero, your referral budget was 100% or 150%, and you were still getting all the business you want? Would you be happy with that? And I think a lot of people would be, because it's your friends who give you business, not necessarily you having to hunt or peck for business. So this idea about stances, there's a lot of different ways to approach either transition or making the choice to transition. There's a very passive way of doing it. We know the assignments that get us to retirement. We know on law of averages what gets us 20 years. And we can follow that. And that can be very passive, because you know as an E4, you need this assignment, E5, you need this assignment, E6 is about a tour and a half. These are the assignments that you need. When you make gunny, this is the assignment that you need. Somewhere in there, you got to be a drill instructor, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like, we know that. You can do that, have a great 20 years, and work on something else on the side. Or you can be very aggressive, Gary Vaynerchuk style, about, all right, I want to be E9 in 25 years. What commands do I need to work for or work in that give me the record that gets me to E9? And it's the same thing as an officer in the Coast Guard. You know, I know I'll never make flag officer. I know I'll never make 06. The people who know they're going to make 06 have already taken the time to aggressively take on the assignments and have the record that gets them competitive for 06. Versus there can be a passive way to 06 in that you just go afloat for 12 years. That's a very passive way to make 06. Yeah. Because if you've gone afloat for 12 years, then you know you've had at least 2 commands, not 3 commands. And we know command is an early designator for senior officer, flag officer rank. So there is an aggressive way that you could go about lining up, 2 tours ahead, this plan, that plan, this mentor 5 years ahead of you to get to 06. And there's a very passive way of, I know I'm going to be afloat for 12 years. Let me go ahead and just get started with being afloat. I'll take whatever comes to me. Like, that to me is what stance is. So in the military, because I believe transition should be an external honest dialogue, the stance of transition can be very passive of, hey, I know I'm doing 20 years. I kind of have an idea what skills I want. So let me work on those skills now at work and on the side. Let me do a deployment. Let me do 2 deployments. I know they're coming. And let me build the resume iteratively across the board to get me that job I want. Versus it can be very aggressive of how, I'm going to do 20 years, but I want to be an E8 at 20 years versus being an E67 at 20 years. So let me put more things in the play. Let me put more things in my plate.
Yeah.
And here's the thing about stance is that stance requires energy, and stance has a price. So it could be a family thing. You see a lot of people get married early, have children early because they want to be older when their children are grown, and you see people wait. It's a health thing. You can see people who want to be bodybuilders and people who just want to be healthy and fit. So for me, passive and aggressive in terms of stance is about how do you lean into that work, that side hustle, that practice that you want to do that's going to help you figure out how to fulfill your definition of service.
Yeah.
And then in the book, I talked about parts of stance. To me, stance also leans into intention. You could have a very passive stance, but it doesn't mean passive like you're a blowover or a holdover, but passive as in the amount of decisions you feel you have to make. So that same 06 who wants to be an 06, the rule is still the same. You have to go afloat. You have to go afloat probably 10 to 12 years. You got to do it. If that's the the lowest risk chance to make 06, you have to go afloat for 12 years in the Coast Guard.
Yeah.
Period. Now,